Welcome to the kitchen of the Celtic Caterer. I'm Chef Eric McBride here, and we want to thank you for this special edition for the Utah Scottish Games here, which I've been a part of for many years, just have never performed here yet. Again, my name is Chef Eric McBride. I'm the executive chef and owner of the Celtic Caterer out of Denver, Colorado. I'm kind of on this national crusade to teach exactly what is Celtic cuisine, because it doesn't fit in the nice little parameters for all the culinary schools. Now, if you don't know what Celtic cuisine is, it's divided between the 8 Celtic nations. If you don't know what those are, Scotland, Ireland, Wales are the big 3 most people know about. A little island between the 3 of them called the Island of Man. It's actually like half Celtic, half Viking culture and heritage. If you go further down the British coastline, there's this peninsula that sticks out beneath Wales. That's Cornwall. Even though Cornwall is listed as being part of England, they will emphatically tell you they are not English. And because of so many places in Cornwall still do not have electricity or running water, let alone Wi-Fi or the internet. Now, the Cornish people are closely related to the Britons. That's Brittany, France. That's that northwestern corner of France that sticks out in the Atlantic. They're the last of the old Gauls, the people who used to fight against Caesar and the Romans. And they will tell you that the rest of the French are nothing but Germans, and technically they're right. Now, the last 2 everybody always forgets about is Galicia and Asturias, Spain. Galicia is the northwestern corner of Spain, right above Portugal. Actually used to include the northern part of Portugal. And Asturias is immediately to the east along the northern coastline. Now, centuries ago, when the English were in their boardrooms renaming everything, calling it Celtic and not Celtic, they said, well, here's Galicia and here's Asturias. They're right next to each other. Let's push them together and make one Celtic nation. Which is why when you go on the internet, and it normally tells you there are 7 Celtic nations. Now, why is Galicia and Asturias, Spain important to all Celts all over the world? Well, if we go to Ireland, and we go to the Book of Kells and the Book of Invasions, it talks about the different migration routes of the people that came to Ireland. The last group of people to come to Ireland were the Celts themselves. Known as the Sons of Melnius, they sailed out of what is now Corona, Spain, and landed in Cork, Ireland, somewhere between the 3rd and 5th century BCE. Now, over the centuries, those people went further up into Ireland, and in the 2nd and 3rd century of the current era, some of them sailed across the Irish Sea, and they became the Welsh. Others went further up, and in 534, the kingdom of Dalriata kind of split apart, led by a name named Fringus MacEirc, who landed over in a place called Dalriata, in Argyll, Scotland, Dalriata. Dalriata is the first time the tribe, the Scots, ever come to Scotland. Now, there were already Celts living in Scotland at the time. They were the ones that the Romans called the Picts. They themselves called themselves Albanacs and called their country Alba. They trace their lineage a little differently all the way back down to Belgium. And ultimately, where all Celts come from is in Hallstatt, Austria, somewhere between 1500 and 1700 BC. So knowing where people come from is how a cuisine develops. As the people move into an area, they find what flora and fauna they can eat, what kind of foods and stuff they can get out of the rivers, the streams, and the oceans. And over some centuries in time, favorites appear, and those favorites become the cuisine. Now, I'm a historical chef. I kind of go and connect all the dots here. And at the beginning, you might have remembered I told you that culinary world doesn't really look at all this stuff as being a correct or perfect cuisine. But if we compare it to other cuisines, it really does. If we go to, say, Mexican cuisine. If you know anything about Mexican cuisine, there's a big difference between Guadalajara in the south, Chihuahua in the north, or Baja out west. They don't even use the same ingredients, but we still call it all Mexican cuisine. If we look at it as Italian cuisine, there's a big difference between Etruscan, Nepalese, and Sicily isn't even part of Italy, yet we still call it Italian cuisine. Celtic cuisine is divided between those 8 Celtic nations, 5 political nations, or 12 languages. The difference is it has over 3,500 years of intercultural exchange and trade that binds them all together. And myself as a historical chef, I kind of take a step back and show you where all the different connecting dots are. And one of those ones that we're going to be doing today is a little thing we're doing here that's uniquely to Scotland, but has been throughout all 8 Celtic nations, is a sticky toffee pudding. Ours done a little bit differently here. So the big thing we need to know about sticky toffee pudding to begin with is, and we're going to do ours a little different, it's sticky toffee pudding, and pudding is an old Middle English word for soft food. It can relate to a cake. It can actually relate to like what we would call pudding, thanks to Jell-O and all the rest of them. And it is also relates to a soft meat dish. It's a more broader word term for it all. Now, if you were to look under Wikipedia or any of the others, they're going to tell you that sticky toffee puddings have only been around since 1975. Yet there are recipes around that are going back in the 19th, 18th, and even 17th century. So it really is a little bit more older of a recipe. Most of the stuff that calls for it is when it comes in adding into dates. Now, obviously this comes from the Middle Eastern time, and so that's what we're kind of using to begin with for our dish. Now we're doing a sticky toffee pudding topped with a real Scotch butterscotch frosting and ultimately topped off with candied bacon, which is why we have a little bacon here on the ground. So first of all, what we need to do is take all of our dates here, and we want to dice them all up. And we have a little bit of water on the side that's been heated up and boiling. And we're going to go and take all of our dates here. We're going to show you the basis of how, because most of the type of puddings and cakes that were done in the time, at least even the 19th century or so, were all done on the stovetops. And one of the things that's really unique about one of the main ingredients used with the dates here is something that is so uniquely Celtic in its usage, and that is baking soda. The Irish use it for baking soda for their soda bread, and the Scots will use it here for their sticky toffee pudding. So I've got some water here boiling on the side, and I've got my dates in here. And what you want to do is you want to soften this down. Maybe add just a little bit more water here. Not much here. And let it all cook in a little bit. Now you're going to take your baking soda, and as a chef, I always deal in big old bulk here for it all, but you don't quite need quite this much for it all here. All you're going to need is about a teaspoon of baking soda here. So we've got our mixture here. You heat this up, and you want to let this kind of simmer or so for about 5 to 10 minutes or so. Let all the, because what you're wanting is the flavors of the dates to loosen up, to soften, and then the flavor to bleed out into the rest of the water and the moisture. You don't want to cook too long because that moisture you're wanting for your cake batter mix for it. Now we're going to show you here, it's a little bit of what is cooking anyway, is a little bit of chemistry. I'm going to try to show you this as much as possible here. So we've got our little pasta here. We're going to add in a little bit of our baking soda. And just like elementary, it foams up. Hopefully you can see all that for right now. But it foams up for us really much. And that's what's helping us break down all the aspects that we need for our sticky toffee pudding, at least the cake portion for it all. Now we're going to use that and mix it in with other aspects of our cake, in which I've already got it made for us here. Just like a normal cake would do with your eggs and all. We've got a nice cake all mixed up for us here. And now we're going to go and want to go and find out how we're going to go and put our frosting up. Now, as I said, this was done with a real Scotch butterscotch frosting and candied bacon. So the first thing we need to do is take our streaky bacon. Now that's what they call our style of bacon from the pork belly. And we want to cut it in what's called lardon cuts, which is a cross grain cut. So what you want to do, different types of bacon, and if you've ever been over to Scotland, you know that their bacon is a little different than ours. That the bacon that they like to go and use is what they call rashers of bacon. See, bacon can go from the pork loin, the meat over the ribs, and the meat of the pork belly for it all. Over there, their rashers of bacon uses half of the pork loin and most of the rib meat. And that's what they call a rasher of bacon. Then they have the bacon that's a little bit of the pork rib and the rest of the pork belly. And that is what they call streaky bacon. So if you're over in Scotland and you're wanting to go and have the regular bacon that you want, you can just ask if they have any streaky bacon. Now, if you're at a B&B or so, they probably are not going to have that, but sometimes the hotels do. So we're going to take our streaky bacon here, and we're going to put it into our frying pan, and we want to cook this all up for us right now. And this is one where we want it to go and break down. We want to drain off some of the fat but we want to use this for everything else. Now, the rest of it we're going to be doing is real Scotch butterscotch frosting. This is how you make real Scotch butterscotch frosting. I'm going to tell you right now, it also means that about 90% of all your butterscotch out there is artificial for it all. So first, biggest thing you need to go and have is a bit of butter. And if you've known and been to any of my cooking demonstrations before, you know the biggest thing that I go and use to talk about for butter is using Kerrygold butter. One of the biggest reasons why I tell you to use Kerrygold butter, normal American butter uses between 17 and 19% milk fat, or between 17 and 19 pints of milk to make a pound of butter. Kerrygold is using between 21 and 23 pints of milk to make that same pound of butter. What it relates to, for us as a chef and cooking, it means it has 3% more milk fat than American butter, but more importantly, 15% less water than American butter. We water down our butter. You ever taken the butter out of the refrigerator and put it on the out and let it, and then after a little while it starts to sweat? Because water and oil don't want to mix, and that's what's happening for it all. So for our dish here, we want to start off mainly with lots of butter and melt this on down. And then we're going to be adding, the key thing for both aspects for our little dish here is brown sugar. Now, the amount of brown sugar you want to use in this, and you're going to want to use, for better flavor, the really dark brown sugar, not light brown sugar. But I really can't tell you exactly how much, because the humidity of the day, the temperature of the room you're in, we're currently kind of outside in the field for us right now. You might have heard some of the background noise before. All that and your altitude all will vary this, how much. So you kind of get a feel for it more. So we got our bacon cooking up right now, frying through here. And in a little bit, we're going to add a little brown sugar to this. So we're also going to add a little brown sugar to our butter here that we're going to be melting out for it all. And the other thing we're going to be using, key ingredient, is a little bit of whiskey. Now let me tell you something about cooking with whiskey. If you didn't know this, whiskey was invented in Ireland. And it's made the same way as how you go and make perfume. So somewhere down the line, somebody got the idea that maybe we should drink it, and thus the entire aspect of whiskey was born. Now, the difference between Irish whiskey, Scotch whiskey, bourbon whiskey is really on how many times you, and what's the product that you're using to make it, but how many times you distill it. Irish whiskey normally is distilled between 3 and 4 different times. Scotch whiskey normally just about twice. It means it has a few more imperfections, but more importantly, it has a lot more of the flavor that we're wanting to go for. So when I have my butter cooking up like this, what I want to add now is a little bit of our blended whiskey. We're using blended Scotch whiskey for this. Woo! And get a little bit of cooking out of that one. Yeah. I got drunk just then. There's a little bell curve I call with cooking whiskey because of the different types that you want to do. We start off with Irish whiskey, the bomb. Because it's been distilled 3 or 4 times, it's very, very nice and light tasting, but it doesn't really go very well with cooking. We cook off too much of the flavors for it to really be tasted too much. Then we have Canadian whiskey, rye, and what I call the holy trinity of cooking with whiskey: bourbon, sour mash, and blended Scotch. Now, bourbons, you've all had probably something like a bourbon barbecue sauce or something. Sour mash, though most all Kentucky whiskeys are a sour mash. Jack Daniels is the predominantly where they're taking the corn cobs and making a whole batch and distilling it for whiskey, and then they take half of that batch out, throw it away, put a half batch of brand new corn cobs in with the old mash of the previous distillation and cook it up again. And they repeat that process every single time. And by doing so, it gives you a consistent flavor every single time. It's kind of like sourdough, the yeast that you do, where you're always using that same little bit for all your flavors all the same. So what we're going to add right now, right into it here, is brown sugar. And again, as I said, how much brown sugar is really depending on our altitude. So we get our little whisk here, and we want to mix this all up. And we're looking for a thickness level that you can get pretty fast. But you want to go cook it up to a point where it's a little thicker than that. Now, at the same time, I got my bacon cooking here. And just a little bit, we're going to drain some of it and add some more brown sugar to that one as well. And one of the other key things that we're going to be adding to all this is cooking with molasses. Now, if you've seen some of my cooking demonstrations before, you might know, and people have gotten out of the habit of cooking with molasses. And it's just something that's just more of a territorial, but it's really essential. In the 19th, 18th, and 19th century, molasses or treacle was one of the best aspects for baking. It allowed things to be keeping it moist longer. It was your preservative before you put all these other chemicals into it. And it kept things nice and sweet for a long time. So you see my butterscotch is coming along quite nicely here. We get a little foam coming up for it. And now to smooth it off, I'm going to take a little bit of heavy whipping cream. I'm going to hold this up so you can all take a look at this in a moment. We get a smooth flavoring for it all. We just want, see, this is the butterscotch, and now I just need it to thicken up a little bit. If you can kind of see that a little bit. It needs to be just a little bit thicker than what we have. So that means a little bit more brown sugar. Stirring this up here. And I'm going to turn the temperature really low. And I'm going to put this off to the side so we can concentrate on the bacon aspect for it right now. Because really all we're doing right now for our brown sugar is just our frosting. Is just let it thicken up a little bit. We don't want to get too thick. We don't want to get to the point where it turns into almost a candy. And if you know about that, it's a little darker, but we do want to get a little bit more of the moisture from the butter out. So that's what we need. Just a little, there we go. And let that go. So now we're on bacon. And the bacon is just starting. You're not really looking for the bacon to be really brown as such. But at this point now, I can take my little drainage here. And just, because we don't want all that fat. We want some of the fat, but we don't want most of it. Now, some people go and I'm one of the ones who normally does, saves your bacon. In fact, every time I've gone to Scotland and Ireland and Wales, Cornwall, it mattered not, wherever I was, I would go to B&B and into their kitchen area, there was always this little pot on the stove of bacon fat. One of the best things that tells you if you've got Celtic cooking blood in you is if you save your bacon. So what we're going to take right now, heat off just for a moment. I want to centralize this a little bit here. All right. So I got my bacon cooking and it's just starting to turn brown. There's a little bit of fat still in there. And that's what we want. Because this is when we're going to add in lots of brown sugar. Now there are several ways of making candied bacon. You can do it this way, which we're using mostly because we're trying to make almost a candy out of it. And there's another version where you can go and take strips of bacon, put it on a parchment, and then paste it with either a little bit of molasses and then sprinkle brown sugar onto it, or just put the brown sugar onto it. Now we are doing both. We are doing a little bit of the brown sugar in here. And we're going to put in a little bit of the molasses as well. Now I am not originally from the southeast of the United States, where molasses is still very, very part of the cuisine. And so the flavor by itself is not one of my favorites, but when you're using different types of molasses and different things, like I just did some soda bread the other day with a teaspoon of brown sugar into it, and they kept it moist for a very, very long time. When I want to go and cook my own cookies or so, I do the same thing. So this is a dish right now where we've got our brown sugar, got our molasses into it. and just a little bit more brown sugar here. We're pretty much making a candy out of this. And if you've ever made a candy, you know the biggest way to go and do this is to go and cook to the point where it turns, so you take a little drop and drop it in a glass of water and it beads up like glass. So this is pretty much where we're going, and all we're doing is we're waiting for a lot of the moisture to come away. So is this starting to cook up? I'm going to move this off to the side now. And I'm going to come back for my cake. Take that off there, and we got my serving dish here. We're going to cut ourselves a nice piece. Sticky toffee pudding cake. There we go. Actually, we'll go ahead and put this back on our hand wheel. And back in the oven out of our way. And this time, we've got our butterscotch frosting, then reduced down the way I like to go and get it. It's very, very good here. And we're just going to pour a little bit of that. Real butterscotch frosting. You know, I was at a fair once, and this guy was bringing around after hours drinking butterscotch flavored rum from his family in the Caribbean anyway, for it all. And I said, really? Because I know how you make butterscotch. And I'm like going, well, what kind of Scotch whiskey did you use to go and make the, this butterscotch rum? And he was like, oh no, there's no Scotch in there. I said, oh, it's just rum flavoring. Well, there are lots of different ways, different people and manufacturers and companies cooking, they will go and use a substitute flavor, tell you ahead of time about a flavor, and you'll automatically feel it. Remember those little teeny candies, those cherry candies, right? Well, it tells you what's in your cherry liqueur. There's no such thing as a really cherry liqueur that goes in it. What they use is almond liqueur. And so when they put the cherries in with the sugar and the almond liqueur, when you bite into it, you're thinking cherries, you bite in it, and you think, oh wow, and your mind already takes the difference. Well, the chef, I'm a little bit more stern. There's others who are far more able to go and distinguish flavors more than I, but I could tell enough on something. And I had a little sip of his little drink, and I went to him and I said, oh, you did the maple syrup route. Because maple syrup can be also made into tasting kind of like butterscotch. And his eyes lit up like I just let out the family secret for it all. So we're kind of getting a little bit right now. Our last little bit. Normally I would like to go and take my candy flavored bacon and lay it out on a parchment paper and let it just cool for a couple hours. But just for our video, we're going to do a little quicker. But it'll still thicken up very quickly. And we want to just top this off our cake right now. Now obviously if you're vegetarian, you don't have to go and put the candy bacon on there, but that little crispy little top for it all with the brown sugar and the molasses within the butterscotch really makes this whole dish. So there you have it. That is a sticky toffee pudding with a real Scotch butterscotch frosting and candied bacon. This is something that's part of my bacon Celtic cookbook. Yes, obviously I've written one like that. I've also written a vegetarian Celtic cookbook, but everybody used to think all my recipes were vegetarian, so we had to write the bacon Celtic one. Now, all these books, and if you can see kind of at the bottom, we have a number of spices and teas as well, are all available on my website, the CelticCaterer.com, or www.celticcaterer.com. And you can get hold of any one of them. There's a couple specials. If you buy any 3 of them, it's like $5 off. Or any 3 or 6 of the spices, there's a little discount here and there package deals for you. You can get an entire Scottish package or an Irish package, or whichever you'd like to look at. You can also follow me on Facebook, the Celtic Caterer and Chef Eric McBride, or on YouTube, on the Celtic Caterer channel. So here we go again, once again, really topical. It's a sticky toffee pudding with a real Scotch butterscotch frosting and candied bacon. I'd like to thank you all very much. As I say in Celtic and Gaelic, Slán Flúir till we all meet again. Thank you very much.